Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Flint Institute of Art's first ever virtual Q&A program. I'm Tracee Glab, Curator of Collections and Exhibitions at the museum, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to our featured guest, artist Matthew Owen Wead, and to tell you about the exhibition Black Matters that's currently on view at the FIA. As you might have guessed, I'm not at the museum with Matthew. We are doing this program remotely as indoor in-person events are not possible right now. I am in Flint, but Matthew's in Chicago. Welcome, Matthew, and how are you tonight?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Tracee, for having me.
Good, good. And we're glad to have you. And I'd like also to take this moment to express our gratitude to the sponsors of this exhibition. Thank you so much to the Founders Society, which has sponsored all of our exhibitions and the Graphics Gallery through June 2021. Before we dive into the questions, I want to give you a little bit of background on the artist and the exhibition. Matthew Owen Wead is an interdisciplinary artist and native of Chicago, whose practice explores social hierarchy through verbal and written language, and he received a BFA from Morehouse College in 2006 and an MFA with a focus on printmaking, sculpture, and photography from the University of Maryland in 2009. And his work often uses multiple mediums and is constructed to be a fully immersive experience. In 2009, Wead created a series of 13 woodcut prints titled Shooting Targets. In this initial series, he depicted real individuals injured or killed by police officers, most of whom were later exonerated. The prints examine the perspective of the civilian during confrontation with the police, which often escalates due to fear of each other. The artist used himself as the model, recalling the fear that he had with his own confrontations with the police. The dates of the incidents range from 1969 to 2009, the year the prints were created. The 13 prints were acquired by the FIA shortly after they were made, and they've been exhibited in whole or in part 3 times, including the 2010 exhibition, Shooting Targets, that was on view in the FIA lobby. And in 2015, they were part of the Common Ground exhibition, African American Art from the FIA, Kalamazoo Institute of Arts, and the Muskegon Museum of Art. And then most recently in the 2020 community exhibition. And as we are all aware, painfully aware, the COVID-19 pandemic caused and is continuing to cause a lot of disruption in our lives. The FIA closed for 3 months, and many of our scheduled programs and exhibitions, including the community exhibition that you see on view here, either ended sooner than planned or had to be rescheduled altogether. And because we needed an exhibition to fill a gap in the schedule, our staff brainstormed some ideas using our permanent collection. And the idea to show Wead's entire series, which is part of our collection, was suggested as another crisis hit our nation during the shutdown, which was the horrific killing of George Floyd, which revealed the urgent need to have a dialogue in our communities about the ongoing systemic racism, which caused such a horrific tragedy. We then approached Matthew about this idea to show the series, and we're glad he agreed. And he also created 3 new works, especially for the exhibition, which we'll see later in this program. A quick note about the format of this program: we asked for questions in advance so that we could make the most of our time together, but no worries if you didn't get a chance to ask a question. And I see already that someone's asking if there's a problem with the audio. I hope not. I hope everyone can hear us.
People can't see it, I'm hearing. I'm not sure.
Cannot hear or see it?
Yeah.
Oh, someone else, it sounds good. So this is the life of virtual programming where I don't actually have people in the audience. that I can see and talk to. So we're doing the best we can. So, and people can see us, so that's also good. So I'm sorry for the person who cannot hear. Maybe it's a setting on your computer. I would also update the latest version of Zoom if you don't have that, because that does improve any kind of bugs in the system. This will be recorded. I should have said this at the beginning in case anyone misses it or they had a technical difficulty, so you can watch it online when this is all over, if it's not working for you in person. So back to the program. We are Zooming, and as you can see, we are taking live questions. So we'll make every effort to answer your question and get to your question, but please be patient, because it's possible that the question you're asking is going to be answered in the course of the program. So we're going to save time at the end to answer live questions. So let's begin with the origin of the series. Matthew, can you tell us what was the impetus for you? Was there one victim or story in particular that prompted you to create the series?
Yeah, it started in 2006. It was Mustafa, a UCLA student. It was a taser incident. For some reason, I decided to click on the video, and you couldn't really see the person, but it was just these screams, and it was just very visceral, just loud screams, and he was in pain. And it just struck me for some reason at that moment, just to I just had this one image of this slave. It's called Whip Peter, and his back was just torn up, and I just had that image in my head. And for some reason, I just wasn't compelled to draw it for some reason. This back, I just had that back image, and I just had to do it in this kind of manner just to get it out of my system, because I just couldn't get it out of my head for a couple of days, actually.
And I want to share with the audience the image that you're referencing about of Gordon or Whipped Peter. But I do want to give a warning, because it's a photograph and it can be disturbing. So this is the image that Matthew was talking about, of the scars that were on the back of a enslaved African who escaped from a Louisiana plantation in March 1863. He gained freedom when he reached the Union camp near Baton Rouge. And abolitionists distributed this photograph, these carte de visite photographs of Gordon, to show the abuses of slavery.
Yeah, it was just an image that we've seen as a kid just over and over again. I think it's just recently done too, on a magazine cover as well. So it's just a very important image to share.
That's really powerful. And I also want to now segue into the title of the exhibition, because it is different than your original series title of Shooting Targets. Could you tell us a little bit more about the significance of the way you designed the lettering? So I'm going to point this out to our viewers. So the number 3 replaced the M of matters, and the number 5 replaced the letter B of black to create the 3/5. So tell us more about what inspired you to do that.
I came up with it about 3 or 4 years ago when Black Lives Matter was first formed. And I just kept repeating it, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. But in my reality, it never really mattered. We only matter 3/5 of the time. It's only when it's culturally relevant or important, mainstream. Even now rap is important, but it wasn't in the 90s and 80s. So it's constantly we're not fully human, we're not fully equal in the eyes of others. So, it's a tongue-in-cheek reference to the 3/5 compromise. So I just wanted to emphasize that without being in your face about it. So I'm using Black Matters instead of the full Black Lives Matter thing. So yeah, it's just more of a tongue-in-cheek action to it to bring attention to that aspect of it.
It's really interesting, and for those of you who don't know or need a refresher of the 3/5 compromise, it was done in 1787. The U.S., in a very short version of a very complicated thing, the delegates of the U.S. Constitutional Convention were trying to decide how to basically count the population of each state to tax them. And in the North, they wanted it to be dependent on the size of the state's free population. And in the South, they wanted to include enslaved individuals despite the fact that they had zero rights as citizens. And by including the enslaved population, the South would create an immense body of power for them as well. And so the compromise was that they would only count 3/5 of the enslaved individuals. And this was in place until the 13th Amendment, and then not officially repealed until the 14th Amendment in 1868. So it's very interesting that you connect that historical event with something very contemporary going on, that these things it hasn't ended in it.
Yeah, nothing's really
Like,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, we're just still counted as half or 3/5 as people. We're not really fully equal still, justice-wise, so.
Right.
That's just my.
Sorry. So now I want to turn to the works themselves. They're woodcuts on paper, and you've mentioned before that printmaking has been historically tied to resistance, since you can create multiple images, they can be distributed widely and expensively. But then you were also telling me more an aspect about it being inspired by a specific image, which was an actual shooting target. Can you tell us more about that connection?
Yeah, when I first decided to make this shooting targets, and this was after Mustafa, I think I did the Mustafa one, and I kind of thought of it as singular. And then the more I thought about it, I just started thinking about other, shooting target victims, because again, Black bodies were being killed constantly, and just nothing happened. People, it's just disposable basically. So I thought of it as almost like shooting targets, like police were trained to shoot us as shooting targets. So I thought when I first made it, I wanted to display these shooting targets almost as a shooting gallery range. And then people could print on the wood blocks themselves on these very expensive paper. So in a way, printmaking, that's what woodcuts are made for. To print out, just have ink, paper, and a wooden spoon. So I kind of, the size of the shooting targets that is the same size as a normal one. And the idea was to take some of these shooting targets and then go to actually a shooting range and shoot them. So that print of Fred Hampton I used as a shooting target range. And, it was just interesting for me how I reloaded the gun and kept shooting. Like the idea of reloading the gun and still shooting the same target was kind of like emotionally impactful for me as well after I printed them out. So yeah, that was the idea, is just to have these multiple copies and expensive paper, almost like these bodies were being disposed of, same way.
And the image on the screen, might be hard to make out, but there are areas where you can actually see the bullet holes of where you used it on the shooting range. Did you get any kind of reactions when you did that? Did anyone, like, by using this by instead of like a normal target, or by yourself?
I think the guy at the shooting range was kind of taken aback by what I was trying to do. I had to convince him to use these shooting targets to shoot them, because it's kind of strange, because it's actual, figure, it's more detailed than usual shooting targets. So it's just a very interesting thing to do. So I was a little nervous when I did it, but I haven't really displayed this shooting target ever, I don't think. I just had it in my collection.
Wow. And I thought it was interesting when I was researching an image of an actual shooting target, that there's actually guidelines for these targets that they must have a black aiming area with a non-reflective white surround. And it kind of was chilling to me, that idea that people practice on a black target. It's very, yeah. In these prints, going back to the series, you show the victims in the moment. You said 5 seconds before they're shot or injured. Mm-hmm. And you put the viewer in the place of the perpetrator or the police officer. And what made you, what drove you, what was that? What were you thinking behind that in particular?
I think it's all about split-second decisions. I think that's what my main focus was. Like, what does a person do when they see this person? Like, that's why not all of them look innocent. Some of them are screaming, some of them run away. It's just that instant, what do you do? How do you feel about it? And I think it's just more expressive in that way, to look at them in their eyes most of the time. and that split-second decision of how would anyone react to it? How would I react to doing that if I had a gun in my hand? It's not necessarily, you know, saying that police are bad. It's just more of like, what does anyone do in that split-second decision in those 5 seconds?
Right, right. And so many of the victims that you chose to depict, there's often a misunderstanding. They thought that they had a gun, and then it turned out to not have a gun. They had a hairbrush, or there, as well as the idea that I should say the reaction that is overreaction. It's there. You know, there's 41 shots to someone, and instead of what would have been, what drew you to that in particular? That idea of excessive force, in the images that you picked.
I think, again, when I originally made it, shooting targets, right? Like, how could anyone shoot anything 41 times? I think that's what it was like, more of an exercise of. Like, again, I had to reload my gun in order to keep shooting the same target that was clearly already done for. So how I was getting in the mind of that person that would, reload, shoot again, shoot some more. And I think that was just something that I wanted to deal with on my own personal experience of, like, because I've had guns put in my face, and again, that split-second decision of what happens. How do I react? Instead of feeling lucky, I shouldn't even felt that emotion in the first place. I think that's the key of it.
And speaking of yourself and feeling yourself at that moment when someone's pointing a gun at you, you also use yourself as the model. And I'm going to share a photo that you sent to me of one of the most recent works, the George Floyd image. And you take photos of yourself, and then in the pose of the work that ends up being woodcut. Here's the photo here. Can you tell me what that was like?
This particular photo I did, well, let me just start from the beginning. I chose myself because practicality is just, it was just me. I don't have that many people, but also it was more, again, I had a gun put in my face as well. So I know that experience. So who better than me to use myself as a pose. So I, in my way. So, and I knew what I wanted, because there weren't many like cell phone footage, photos of the victims. Fred Hampton wasn't filmed instead. Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, these are stories that we hear, and then we move on from that. So I will read the stories, picture what it was like 5 seconds before, because I know, again, what I experienced the 5 seconds before a gun was put on me. So I would just try to, imagine what that would be like, and just take many photos. And, trying to get someone else to do what I'm thinking in my head, it probably wouldn't work as well. So I would have to get in the mindset. I would read the stories. In this instance, I had to watch the George Floyd video maybe 20 times to get the right angle and right facial features for it, which was very emotional for me to do. And then I had to recreate it. So I acted like a knee was pressed down on my neck. And it was kind of strange, because I would have the camera on a timer, and I would just hear this clicking constantly redoing it. And then it just became almost like a meditation of just hearing this, which was almost traumatic for me, because I would hear like the click, click, click. So yeah, I think it was more of like just going through the experience of it all, and getting the emotion the best way I could.
Right. So let's turn to the technique that you use, the woodblock technique, where the black ink is on the surface of the wood, and what the color of the paper that shows through is the carved surface, or that's been dug out. And like printmaking, woodcut technique in particular has been tied to many political statements, especially concerning death and destruction. And I'm just showing you two woodcuts on the screen. And one you mentioned Max Beckmann as an influence, but another one in the FIA collection, Hans Jelinek. And these are both statements about war, World War I and World War II, respectively. And it's interesting that this particular medium is tied to this theme, especially. Can you tell us more about why you chose this medium?
Yeah, I think, well, I've been a printmaker since college. I used to do lino cuts and wood cuts and all that stuff. It just gives me more freedom and emotion in my things. Like you can be a photorealist all you want, but woodcuts will always take a chunk out that you never wanted to take out. Like no matter what you do, no matter how well you draw it, you know, one misplaced gouge mark and it becomes something different, completely different. So I like that idea of it. So it gave me that freedom of, you know, using charcoal, not so, you know, it's more about the emotion than the person pretty much, which is again why I kind of did a self-portrait of these people, but with a little bit of them. You know, I have hair in some of them, and some cases I have a little beanie. I'm a child. So the woodcut just allowed me that freedom of expression. For this particular, for the Mustafa one, I knew that I wanted to get those marks, those like almost like slave marks, and that was the best way I could do it in the most natural way, to get these like almost graphic marks, and you can see like the chunks taken out and things like that, and just the motion of it. So I think that's really why I chose the woodblock technique, to just, you know, to get the emotion out of it, you know, the flowing of the hair. And honestly, I had no clue what it would turn out to be, because you never know what a woodcut would be until you lift up print. That's always like, it's always a surprise for a printmaker when they lift up the paper, because they never know what it's going to look like. And I think that was some kind of excitement as well, to see what comes out of it. You know, that's why it's just so graphic and chunky.
Right, right. And the one on the screen is one that you used for the most recent Breonna Taylor print that's in the exhibition. That's the
That was a tricky one, because I couldn't do a woman, but I also had to do a self-portrait. So that's why, you know, I'm the guy. I used Breonna Taylor's actual portrait for that to include.
Right.
That was a unique one.
And so now I want to turn to some artistic influences and connections to your work. And one of the artists that you mentioned to me that was in your top 3 artists was the Baroque artist Caravaggio. And when you mentioned that to me previously, I immediately thought of this one painting of the boy bitten by a lizard that's in the National Gallery in London, because the hand gestures in particular and the face, kind of the look of horror and also kind of shock, it really resonated with me. In another work, and this particular work is in the series, it's not part of the exhibition, but it is in the series of Miguel Caracera's Cruz. It's just very similar, and I thought immediately of that connection. But what else drew you to Caravaggio's work in terms of what you do?
I just want to say I had no clue that that was that.
I know it's.
I surprised when I saw that. Like, I don't know if it's subliminal or not, but I had no clue that it was a similar pose. So that's kind of cool. It's just the way he draws his figures, the colors, like it's always dramatic. You know, he's one of the founders of chiaroscuro, so that black and white, that really dark shadow, play with shadows, play with light. And again, like in this paintings, the emotions of the face. You know, you can always tell there's something going on. You know, there's more to it than I. And I'm always drawn to, you know, telling a narrative without telling you everything that's in it. So that's why he's one of my biggest influences, or one artist that I admire the most.
And another one that you mentioned, especially in terms of her woodcuts, was Kathy Kollwitz. There's 2 on the screen, a self-portrait and then a work called The Volunteers from the War Portfolio. What can you tell us about her influence?
Yeah, she didn't influence the woodcuts per se, but I found her maybe 5 years ago. And again, I was drawn to her work almost like Max Beckman. It's like that German expression, you know, the lines in this old one's face, very intense, in your face, you know, these almost like skeleton-like figures. Again, there's the deep gouge marks, you know, again, it's more about the emotion than actual representation of it. I'm just really drawn to these type of dramatic characters and these narrative stories. Like this one, the volunteers, they're looking for something. Like, what are they looking for? What are they about? I'm drawn to that action off camera kind of thing.
Right. And she used so much of her personal pain and emotion in her work. It just kind of oozes through her work. It just she was very interesting connection. Another artist you mentioned was Elizabeth Catlett. So, and this is a linoleum cut, little bit same relief technique, but just different medium, bit different substrate. This is Harriet from the Museum of Modern Art, New York.
Yeah, I mean, in the same way, she's that same, dramaticness, sorry, the drama, the lines, it's a little bit more detailed. And, I know a little bit of her life as well. She went to Mexico, became expatriate, just her life story is just very dramatic and charismatic. She didn't take any prisoners or anything like that. I was just drawn to her as a life and as an artist. Sculptures are really impactful. Again, it's about the face, the emotion. She's pointing off screen. She's looking at something. You don't know what it is, but it's very foreboding and dramatic. And I'm just drawn to that type of art as well.
And the last artist we'll bring into this discussion is one that you mentioned as someone else pointed out as a pointing out the similarities, which was Robert Longo's series Men in the Cities, where he used their life-size drawings of men in suits and contorted poses and white men in suits, and someone described it as a death dance of the modern man, which I thought was an interesting way of describing it. But I have on there a comparison with the Sean Bell, just that kind of moment of arrested motion, but for very different reasons. What can you say about, or what do you want to talk to us about this particular comparison?
Yeah, I think there's similarities when it was pointed out to me as I was doing the Shooting Target series. At first I thought it was like, oh man, somebody's doing exactly what I'm doing. And that's just always the worst thing as an artist to try to, like, after you did 10 woodcuts, you find somebody else is doing exactly the same thing as you're doing. But there's some similarities in terms of the way he uses charcoal. But the way he uses charcoal is more of a smooth way. It's very like light. Mine is more aggressive in that nature. And like the people that he took photos of, it's almost like manipulated, where it's just contorting and twisting. But, these photos, it's like he took photos of his friends and he shot balls at them and things like that and took the photos. So it's almost like he's playing with the idea of death and dance. Like you don't know which one is which. Mine is more of like, this is death. Like there's no playfulness with it. It's more of a serious take on it. But yeah, again, it's the same idea of like tongue in cheek. It's like you don't know if these people are, dead or are they dancing, having a good time. Also, he doesn't focus on the faces. I focus primarily on faces. The hands are more of an afterthought in terms of if they need to be used or not. I think he uses the whole body for that to show the emotion. I just use the eyes and the face for the most part.
Another, and you kind of already alluded to this, the aspect of the work of your series, in the works in your series, is the fact that they're cropped and you don't see their entire bodies. You really do, as you mentioned, focus on the face and whatever they're holding in their hands or whatever's off the screen or not shown. Can you go into any more detail about why you wanted to focus on that particular aspect?
Because I think that's something that you should focus on, honestly, as the viewer and as the person who's I hear it all the time, is like you always focus on the face. If people who have killed other people, it's like that's something that people hone in on, that haunts them sometimes. I think the body would have just taken away from it to zoom it in. It needs to be cropped in your face, because I think if the whole body, there's a detachment involved, and I didn't want you to be detached. I wanted you to be very much involved in what's going on. Because I think if you use legs and things like that, your eye can move everywhere around the body instead of where I wanted you to focus on in the first place. The hands are, again, an afterthought. Like the Amadou Diallo one is the whole wallet controversy. Did he have a wallet in his hand? Was it a gun? Et cetera, et cetera. The Fred Hampton one, I want to show his hands in that pit, because that's how you wake up. If somebody's yelling at you in your face, that's something you'll wake up to. So, I think that there's certain aspects of using the hand, but only when it was absolutely necessary. Otherwise, it was all about the face for the most part. Even with, again, the Amadou Diallo one, it wasn't about his face because it was dark. So, you couldn't see anything. So I wanted to convey that as well.
Right. And as you mentioned to me that most of these works, or almost all of them were done before there was body cams and cell phone footage and things like that. So you really were recreating these out of your imagination based on what what was known about the cases of particular incidents.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we're going to bring it up to present day, which with the 3 works that you just created for the exhibition, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. And tell us about, why you wanted to continue the series.
Well, I didn't want to continue the series. I was just over it in 2009, only because it was constantly happening. I couldn't possibly do the amount of work that was needed for every person that was killed. I was leaving people out. That's why I chose my favorite ones in the beginning, because I could have kept going. There was a lot of people that could have been done. Tony Dade, I couldn't do. So I chose these 3 because these were the most important ones in the most recent timeline that I could do in a short amount period of time that I was given. So the Ahmaud Arbery one was, of course, impactful because it was one of those. It started off as like, oh, what's happening, camera? This happened 3 months ago. Why is it just not picking up steam? And again, as a Black man, it was just like, these things happen all the time. So it didn't bother me as much because it happens all the time. They're going to get away with it, et cetera, et cetera. But because George Floyd happened right after Ahmaud Arbery happened, it was kind of like this whole steamroller thing, and then Breonna Taylor. So each one of them have an impact for different reasons. So I wanted to kind of include them in it because I just felt that it was necessary. I didn't want to show this exhibition from something else 10 years ago and neglect what's happening now. That would just been a disservice to everybody involved, including myself. So I pushed myself to do these 3, particularly because they were important to the whole movement of what's going on right now for me.
And you've already talked about this a little bit, but on a personal level, what does this series mean to you?
I think I don't know now. I feel like it's important. Now that I think about it, it's like, I think because I'm blessed to have it in a collection, because I think that their names will always be solidified. I think going back to the Longo thing, he said it's like almost like a monument to these people. So I kind of feel the same way. Like Breonna Taylor's name will always be known, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, no matter what happens. So I think it was also a way for me to process it as well. I don't think there's an answer to anything that's happening, but I think for me, I had to get it out of my system because it was just something that affects me constantly, or used to more so than it does now. So I think it was just a way of exercise of me getting out my system, and hopefully for other people to enjoy as well, or feel some type of way about it.
Right. And as an artist, what do you think the artist's role is in the crises that we're going through right now, whether it's COVID-19, police brutality, racism? How do you see the artist? What do you see the artist's role being in that? And
I think it depends on what type of artist you are. I think if you're a narrative artist, somebody told me all art is political, right? Even if it's abstract art, like a color field painting. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of leaning towards that sentiment as well. But I don't think that, if you make abstract work, that you should all of a sudden start making these protest pieces about something else, unless you feel compelled to. I think art in nature has always been to spread some message to somebody. We've done it in history time and time again to depict these things, to have some type of narrative. So I think the artist's role is just to keep making art constantly. Whatever your lane is, just keep making it and keep doing it as best as you can during these times.
And is there anything in particular that you would like the community of Flint to know about you or your work?
I don't know per se Flint per se, but I think that just go visit and just like, if you have any questions, of course, you can contact me through you all. But I think it's just important to remember that, these images are here for a reason, and just to explore that as best as you can.
Right. So we're getting close to we're past the halfway point. So I want to check out some questions because we're getting a lot of comments and questions. So I just wanted to kind of look over, I'm looking at my monitor where we have all the questions. So one person said we're Matthew's family members, and they want you to know that we are out here, or they are out there,
Okay.
out there. And they asked if there was any way for you to see them. And of course, unfortunately, the format of this event is that we can't see the participants. So I apologize for that, but just so you know, Matthew, you've got support out there. And then someone asked if there is a rope on Fred Hampton's neck. And I'm going to go back to that image so we can look at that a little bit more closely. Just bear with me for a second while we get back to Fred Hampton. And you could, it doesn't look like.
Oh, no, that's a shirt collar. Yeah, that's a shirt collar.
That's a shirt collar. And let's go back to, and if there's any other questions, feel free to send them to us live right now, and we'll tackle them. The questions that were asked in advance have been woven in with the things that we've been talking about already. And one of the questions that came in is, why are people clearly triggered by Black Lives Matter? What is your take on that?
I think I don't know why. Honestly, I don't particularly know why that's an issue for people. I know I hear, some people are raised to, I don't see color, all lives matter, that kind of thought process, which for me is kind of foolish or foolhardy, because Black Lives Matter is just a cry for equality. Because we, again, going back to the Three-Fifths Compromise, Black people have never been equal. And if you have a problem with all lives matter, I like to take it to, equality of, like, women aren't paid equal. So if you can agree that women are paid equal, then you can agree that equality does not exist. So all lives should matter. All lives does not matter. It's never mattered. We can go back to the summer race riots, 1919 to 1921 for 3 years. We can go back to federal housing when it was illegal to sell house to Black people. You'll go to jail for that. Somebody screamed in my face one time. It was just like, what about now? What about now? And I say again, what about now? People are still getting lynched for no reason. Like, why is lynching still a thing? We're still trying to do voting rights. Why is that still a thing? Voting rights should have been done. Like, this should have been a no-brainer. So I don't see why that's an issue for people. It's just a cry for equality, really. I don't understand why all lives should matter, but they do not.
Very well said. And I also came across this quote from the former chief of police in Ferguson, Missouri, Delrish Moss, who's now the captain with the Florida International University Police Department. And he had this quote: "There would never have been a need to say Black Lives Matter if people didn't feel that Black lives didn't matter prior to that." So
Right.
I think that was really well said, and also your exhibition and your works and what you have brought to this as an artist really, I think, brings that to light in a different way. And it's what I've heard from visitors to the exhibition, and it's been that it's incredibly moving. And so I think art has that platform, that ability for us to slow down and really engage with something that it forces us to confront what's inside of us. And that can be scary at times, but it always leads us to be a better human. And so thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate that you have done this and you're willing to share it with our audience.
Yeah, I think honestly it was never meant to be an attack on anybody particularly. It's more about empathy. It's like, what are they looking at in these 5 seconds before they die? And again, that's why it wasn't, Black Matters Now for this exhibition, but again, the original title was Shooting Targets. That's why I had more, not just Black people. It was predominantly Black, but I had Puerto Rican man, Kent State, things like that. It was just this quick to fire, quick to act rather than understand. And I think that's really what I want people to take away from it, is just understand what's going on. Like, we're all scared. I think some of them just really scared to be in this situation rather than this anger or this idea that these people, I think that's also why I made it too, because when you read about it, even now, we still don't believe what happened. We need camera proof. We need different angles. You know, what did they do to cause this? That was a big thing before the camera phone was like, what did they do to deserve the shooting? And my argument was, what does anybody deserve to get shot 41 times? Like, look at their faces. I don't think you could be like have the heart to shoot somebody 41 times looking at somebody's face like that. And that's what I kind of want to explore with this series, is that idea of multiple shootings. So yeah, sorry, I just thought about it when I was talking.
Really appreciate that. So there's another question that has come in. Did you experience any emotional pain when you were creating these images, or does the creation take you to a different place?
I think both. I think it took a lot out of me to make those 13 targets, because again, I had to read it, and then get in the mindset of the shooting victim. You know, I had to think about what they were probably thinking about. You know, I have one who's a kid who's giving somebody directions and he got shot right in the head, or the hairbrush. Like, and again, going back to my own experiences when we're talking to cops, I don't think there's ever been a time I've been calm talking to a cop ever. Like, just heart beating fast. You know, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be around them. So just getting into that mindset of it and taking that picture of yelling in the camera, crying in the camera, crawling in the, you know, it takes an emotional toll on me doing that. And then it takes a physical toll, because now I have to carve them out. I'm drawing them, carving them out, and my only focus is that particular person. So yeah, it was emotionally draining for me. Absolutely.
So this question comes from Dad. What other mediums do you use, or is your wood carvings your favorite?
I would say printmaking is my favorite thing. So lino cuts, wood cuts. Not big on painting. Drawing, I can do charcoal, but yeah, I would say wood cuts and sculpture. So any type of building, anything would be my favorite.
And another question, how important do you believe art is to advocacy? Should there be more emphasis of art depictions?
Art to advocacy? Mm-hmm. I mean, again, like I said, I think art plays a role in everything we do. You know, we see art all around us. I mean, again, depending on what type of artist you are, your role is increased or decreased based on what you want to do. You know, I don't think it should be forced upon anybody, but if you feel compelled to make an art piece about a particular political figure, political thoughts, statements, then do it. If you don't, then don't do it. I don't think there should be any force either way on that.
This question said, and you mentioned that the conversation that you had with the person at the gun range when you were taking your artwork there to shoot, they wondered what he may have felt, or how did the conversation go with that individual?
It was a very awkward conversation. I was nervous because I didn't think he was going to let me do it. It was probably my first or second time in the gun range too, so it was that on top of like, hey, I want to bring in these custom shooting targets. Can I do it? I don't think he cared either way. He didn't know what these people were or anything like that. I think he kind of maybe thought like, are you trying to shoot? You know, I think there's some kind of like legal thing. You can't shoot people that you know, kind of thing. So I thought that was another thing.
Enemy or something.
Yeah, but luckily it was a woodcut, so there was no real issue with that. I mean, it's been so long ago, but I definitely think it was like a 10, 15-minute conversation about it, what the purpose was.
This question, do you hope that your work will inspire a change in the mindset of people who struggle with the current reality of systemic racism? If so, what change do you hope to see happen?
I think art can change people's minds, but I think that takes over time. I don't think that these particular works are meant to change people's minds. Again, I think it's more so to inspire empathy more than change. So I think it's more supposed to like rise something out of you. I think people who want to change was already in the process of changing before they saw my pieces. I don't think they'll see it. I'm like, oh man, Sean Bell, he died. Like, all right, let me not, believe in police brutality. I don't think that these particular pieces are meant for that type of change.
And another person asked, because there's so many steps involved in terms of making just one print, you being the model, cutting the wood, printing, photographing yourself, this person asked, were there certain pieces that weighed more on you mentally?
Yeah, like I said, the George Floyd one weighed on me a lot. Maybe because it was like I restarted um, the series again, but that one weighed heavily on me. I had the idea of that darkness above it for a while, but once I started taking the photos, it became a little bit more traumatic for me. The Kent State piece, when I yelled in the camera, that was another one.
That's Jeffrey Glenn Miller.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll say a couple of them took. The Mustafa one, of course, took a lot. Took a lot out of me just because it was the first piece. Yeah, so I can't really go back into the time of remembering which ones took more than others, but yeah, there was definitely some more than others that took emotional toll on me.
And related to that, someone submitted the question, how does an artist care for themselves given the emotional output into the work can be so triggering?
You tell me. I don't know. Just it depends on what you use to decompress one after you make the piece. What are you listening to while you're making the piece? I tend to go on the comedy side of things. I watch Netflix comedy shows to try to decompress from that. But I mean, I don't know. I don't. It's kind of hard to get out of that. It takes you a couple of days. Again, the physical toll too. You got to draw the piece, cut the piece, then you got to print the piece. So and by the time you're done with one piece, you're just done with everything. So you just kind of zone out for a couple of days afterwards, in a way.
Right. So I'm just going to look over and make sure we've caught all the questions. Lots of good questions. We talked about that. Oh, your artistic mentors. So we talked a lot about historical artists, but is there anyone?
Mentoring. I don't have any like direct mentors. I had some that kind of inspired me to do better. I had Charnel Holloway was one of them. She was my undergrad teacher in Spelman College. David C. Driscoll was an inspiration in a way that he did printmaking. His piece is behind me, actually. He just recently passed. But I did a print with him, and that was kind of cool to do. In terms of direct mentors, I didn't really have many behind me. I just had peers that were, just inspired me to do better and work harder.
And what's your next project, or what are you working on right now?
I'm working on a couple of things. I'm working on masks in almost like again, social political manner, not normally how it's seen, to convey images and words on people's faces. And I'm also, I actually graduated the Shooting Target series to the series that deals with deer antlers. There's a very famous photo of a Chicago police officer, two police officers that put deer antlers on a John Doe. It's a very powerful image. If you just look it up, it's Chicago Police Department deer antlers. And I use that as almost like a symbol. It's almost like a Jordan symbol. So I'm using that as like a way to convict like another person getting killed by the cops kind of thing. So I involved the shooting targets into that kind of idea.
And another question that came in is how, going back to the series, how long does each piece take?
Back then, it probably took me about, from start to finish, if I started and finished, probably a week and a half. These particular pieces, George Floyd, I did 3 woodcuts in 5 days. I don't recommend anyone do that.
Wow.
But yeah, they usually take me about a week and a half to process. I had to choose the person, so yeah, it takes about a week and a half.
Yeah. What was involved with your research leading up to, I mean, you obviously, you had to narrow it down and pick a person, but what did you do to?
I don't remember some of them, but I do remember the Kent State one is a very famous one. Fred Hampton is a very famous one. Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo. Miguel, I think I came across it, maybe just looking it up, or I don't know how I came across it, but again, it's just something stuck out at me, like the disservice was done to him. Like, I think it was a party he was at and these cops just came and harassed him, and it was just reading it and doing, the research I could on him.
Right.
That just impacted me or compelled me to do his story. They also had to be either former law enforcement or law enforcement. I didn't really want to do just regular people shooting. it had to be law enforcement or former law enforcement officials.
And if this is sort of related to a question that came in, but if people want to know more about you or inquire about purchasing a print, how would they go about doing that?
They can go on my website, MatthewOwenWead.com, just my full name. I have a store there now, and you can contact me through my contact form, and I'll answer you directly. So.
Great. And your website is also on the flintarts.org webpage too. So if someone missed that, they can check out get the link through our website as well. And there's one more question that came in. Would you ever consider creating a project centered on the other side of Black Lives Matter argument, or how that affects? No.
What's the other side of the argument?
I don't know. I'm just asking the question that someone asked.
I mean, if they can tell me what the other side of it is,
yeah.
I wouldn't know what that other side would be. Again, I guess
it would be the that thing we talked about earlier about all lives of that, or blue lives, or
yeah. I mean, would they want me to like depict the people who like painted over the Black Lives Matter? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
You know, what's the other side of that? I don't see what the pushback it is for that. Just a push for equality. Why is that so angers so many people to say it's not a we matter more? We just say, hey, we matter. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't like to use this. It's the cliche argument of the house on fire. You don't see a house on fire and say all houses matter. You get the fire out of that one house, and then you deal with other issues later. I don't get that. So yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, lots of questions are suddenly coming in. We don't have much time, so someone says, thank you, such a powerful collection, the split decision captured in art. And that, they're asking if this is going to be recorded, and yes it is. So it's going to be available at flintarts.org shortly after today. I'm not sure exactly when, but we're going to get it up on the website as soon as possible. And this person asks, when you start a series, do you have the idea in full from the beginning, or did it change as you continued making the works in the series? Which
I think it changed in the victims I decided to depict, the number of people I wanted to do. But yeah, for this particular series, I had an idea of what I wanted to show. It never evolved from that. You know, it's always, because it's just a very simple concept. One person, 5 seconds before they shot. Nothing really to, evolve from that idea.
Okay. And again, someone's asking about when the recording is going to be released. We will let you know as soon as possible. So we're hoping very, very soon. And I think that does it for the questions. Let me just see if there was anything else. I want to just ask you if there's anything right now, either visually or in the arts, or anything that is making you feel hopeful right now.
I mean, the younger generations make me feel hopeful. I mean, back in the day, no one cared about, the Tulsa riots, Juneteenth, all these things are finally coming to fruition. Like, the Confederate flag it took another death to get this, but that's hopeful that, the younger generation are doing the work for the people who've already been talking for decades and centuries about this, that they're actually doing the legwork. That's hopeful for me to see.
Right. Well, we're out of time, and we really would like to conclude by thanking everyone who attended this virtual Q&A. And I especially like to thank Matthew himself for taking the time to talk to us about his works. And if you haven't done so already, please come and see the exhibition in person, which will be on view through October 11th. As a reminder, because of the millage passed in Genesee County, we are free every day of the week to county residents, and Saturdays are free for everyone else, thanks to Huntington Bank. If you've missed any part of this program or know someone who cannot attend, which I've heard already from people in the comments that happened, a recording of this will be available very soon on our website. We'll try to get it up there as soon as possible. Matthew, any last words?
No, thank you for coming out. Appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you again, and have a great evening, everyone. And we'll say good night and have a great evening.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.